Hello. It's with great humility that I accept this year's Pete Coulson Award in Teaching. Pete seems to be an amazingly humane man, the kind of teacher that inspires people to become their best selves in his presence, and even away from his presence, make themselves the kind of person that he'd want them to be. To be mentioned in a man like his company is a privilege. So thank you. While not worthy, I can try to live up to it. What I'd like to say about education, a field that I think is my vocation, is that the professional educational establishment has gone very much astray. Education exists to provide clear communication of any culture or civilization's values and skills from one generation to the next. In a republic like ours, it is to teach people how to think. And in an immigrant nation like ours, it is to be the embodiment of the melting pot. In every one of these areas, progressive educators have gone off the rails. Parents own their children, not professional educators. It is not for bureaucrats in any state or national capital to determine what kind of people our schools will produce. That is the job of families. Intact families, whatever shape they happen to be in, families that care about their children and about raising them right. That's the job of families, not of educational bureaucrats. But increasingly, Woodrow Wilson's dangerous adage that a college's job is to make the son as unlike the father as possible is more and more being taken. The notion that schools will bring a new kind of American, a better kind of American. This is analogous to the Soviet Union's old goal of making a new Soviet man. Parents have primary responsibility for their children. And many professional educators have forgotten this. Another thing is, it's not what's taught in the schools. It's what's not taught that's causing the greatest harm. It is true that critical race theory, by any other name, is suffused in most curricula because that's where the funding is. That's what college pedagogues say is the future. There are so many forces aligned to make race and gender and sexual orientation the prime factors which identify a person. This is toxic. It teaches children that they are their race, that they are their birth characteristics, that they are not in control of their destiny. As young Americans, they absolutely are in control of their destinies, and our schools need to teach how young Americans can seize the future and build the dreams that they have. More than that, education should encourage students to dream big dreams, not to be scurrying around trying to avoid offending anyone. The job of a teacher is to inspire students with the vibrancy of culture and civilization, those aspects which they teach in their classrooms. My job is to teach young Americans. I am a conservative and a Christian. I'm a lousy Christian, but I'm a Christian and I'm a conservative. But my job is not to teach young conservative Christians. My job is to teach young Americans. I, like all teachers, should be humble enough in our job to trust that the students and families that are entrusted to us are going to be wise in the future, whatever that means. I am proud of students who come out of my classroom and think, whether they happen to think progressively, liberally, conservatively, libertarianly, or any other way. I am not here to tell people conclusions. I am here to encourage people to learn about their past so that they can see the world with a depth in genuine proportion. And this brings me to the final point. I said that it's what schools aren't teaching that's the problem. The antidote to any ideology is history. And the antidote to the kind of racism and sexism and orientationism that's being foisted on our kids as a deterministic reality that they cannot escape is to teach intact the history of Western civilization. Idaho has a population that I think would be willing and able to make 1 year of passing the history of Western civilization a high school graduation requirement. Just as juniors in high school have to take and pass United States history in order to demonstrate that they understand how our republic came to be, and how they have to take civics and U.S. government in order to demonstrate their understanding of how to function as a citizen, every single Idahoan, regardless of their heritage, regardless of their orientation, regardless of their politics, is a part of Western civilization, the only global civilization to turn the definition of a fully enfranchised human being from a small group of astrologer priests in Mesopotamia and god kings in Egypt to include every single man, woman, and child. There is something about Western civilization which developed the concept of inalienable human rights, as well as the technology to put men on the moon and develop the internet. We owe it to our kids to pass on the Western heritage, without which United States history is taught in a vacuum, like watching the movie Star Wars from the time everyone arrives on the Death Star. That's not sufficient. You've got to start at the beginning. So, with respect, I advocate that we include the teaching of Western civilization in high school graduation requirements within the state of Idaho. More than that, I encourage parents and community members to be involved in their schools and to make sure that it's not educational bureaucrats and their fellow travelers in isolation that is deciding what the portrait of a graduate ought to be. I can only hope to teach as well as Mr. Coulson. I do my best. And I thank you for the award, but more than that, I thank you for caring enough about education to make it your personal business. This is Ralph K. Ginorio, signing off. Take care.